are some of the most destructive things that you've seen guys do after a breakup that, you know, maybe they aren't even aware that they're doing?
Well, they lose respect for themselves, and they can get caught into a cycle of guilt and innocence where they will make themselves really guilty for what happened, thinking that, okay, if I was a better man, if I was more valuable, if I would have been a better leader, visionary within the relationship, I would have been able to save this. And so it's a shortcoming on my part. And it's because I am not adequate as a man that this relationship ended. And she's innocent. Everything that she did was perfect. It's all on me. So they carry the burden of the relationships ending on their back as a personal failure. And that is, there's something that can feel good about that, because it's a way of professing to the universe and to professing to life that, hey, like, I'm going to take responsibility for this, and I'm going to blame myself because I'm the only one to blame. And it feels like the adult thing to do. However, it's not an accurate way of looking at the relationship. Now, the other thing that a man can do is they can flip to the other side of the spectrum, where rather than them being guilty, they make their partner guilty. And they say, well, it's her fault, right? If she was different, if she was more emotionally open, if she allowed herself to be more connected to me, or she tried harder, this wouldn't have happened. And so then they hold on to some toxic resentment and poison about the other person, sometimes even questioning whether any of the emotions they experienced in the relationship with a woman were even real. So then they start to question themselves, because, see, if you demonize your partner in the breakup, then you have to live with the fact that you might have a faulty perception about your partner selection and your choice. What was I doing with someone who is this much of a demon for this many years? So now it goes back from guilty for them to back to guilty for you for making a bad choice. So they can get caught in this cycle of going back and forth between guilt and innocence. And it can be like being on a roller coaster of these highs and lows, of where you get momentary relief from making yourself feel innocent, and then the other person guilty because you get to feel anger. But then when you really get down to it and you unpeel that layer, you realize, well, maybe I'm the one to blame. And then you go back to feeling guilty and you relieve them of the guiltiness, and you make them innocent. And in that process of being on this roller coaster of guilt and innocence, a guy might do a number of different things. He might break his own integrity and start stalking the woman. He might start texting her and apologizing and maybe unleashing emotionally on her, venting all of incriminating beliefs and accusations onto her and projecting all that anger onto her. He could fall into a depression and start drinking and feeling that he's worthless and he's not worthy of the relationship that he ultimately wanted. So this guilt and innocence polarity is a really important thing to pay attention to, because when we start to become aware of that's what we're doing, that's the first step to being able to step out of it.
I like how you brought up that piece about the guilt of being with the wrong person. Like, oh, like, what was I thinking? And I think especially as I've seen different scenarios that have played out with different men that I've, you know, whether in my life or, you know, some of the clients that I've worked with, as well as they get into these situations where everyone around them goes and say, well, I told you so. Like,
Exactly.
I knew that wasn't going to work out. What were you thinking? And I think a lot of times there are men that are also in very toxic relationships as well. And they know that they are. But I love how you brought that up, because that often isn't talked about there is also that shame of, oh, I can't make good choices. I don't know how to pick the right person. You know, I don't, maybe I don't deserve to be with the right person. Why am I stupid? Maybe in thinking down that path.
What ends up happening is they compromise their own self-respect. Right? So there's the shame that comes with the guilt. And then suddenly there's a loss of respect to yourself in this, because you're seeing the relationship as a failure. Yeah.
How do you combat that? You know, because often emotions can be a beautiful thing, and at the same time they can be something that is very, very hard to break through, especially when you feel like you are overtaken by emotion. And especially for men that often feel like they don't have a place to really release it, and you're in this dark place, you know, after you break up. How do you really break out of that? Because often I hear the dialogue of, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. I just feel lifeless. I feel like I can't get out of this. Like I'm in a dark hole.
Yeah, man, that is so. Ooh, that's a heavy question, and it's an important question, and there's no simple answer.
Mm,
So I'm going to start I'll pull back a little bit because what essentially is happening in this is we really of a divorce, in the midst of a breakup, in the midst of extreme loss, we really get to examine our philosophy. And if we forget that this is an opportunity for us to upgrade our philosophy on life, and we go immediately to behaviors and tactics of like, don't do this or do this,
mm,
we miss out on the ability to transform ourselves into an alchemist that may really be necessary and um, not just necessary, but it's an opportunity for us to change our entire lives. So the invitation that I would have for any man going through this is to, number one, slow down and stop and see that what is happening in your life, there has been a massive tectonic shift in your reality that has created a tsunami that is going to hit the shore.
mm,
Now, that tsunami is one where you're in the ocean and you're feeling this well of emotions coming up, and these emotions are so damn powerful that they can pull you under, and you can feel like you're drowning and like you can't get air.
mm,
I've experienced that personally. Many of my
mm,
clients have too. That's when they typically find me.
mm,
Or it's an opportunity for us to actually find balance and be able to surf this wave to a shore that you otherwise would not be able to get to on your own. So the breakup can be the crucible. It can turn into a vehicle that can take you to a level of consciousness. It can take you to a level of identity reintegration that you would not have been able to get had you been just in a marriage or a relationship that just went fine. So the first thing is to just pause and see that there's a choice point available in front of you, and that this blast, this tectonic shift, is maybe an explosion that's going off in your life, to use another metaphor. And it can either burn you down, or we can transform it and turn that explosion into something that is taking place inside of a piston that powers you forward and gives you momentum to create in a way that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So that's the first step, is just to start to see and crack the door open a little bit with the invitation of, this might be the greatest opportunity of your life to create what
mm.
you want, even as something that you love so dearly is disintegrating and falling away.